How do you make a chatbot with ChatGPT? It's actually a lot easier than you might expect. So, the reason why you want a chatbot is because often you don't have time to read through dozens of pages of text yourself. You don't want to have to interact with all these click-through links and figure out what's going on. It's a lot easier and I think more natural to speak to someone or something in just a regular language conversation, as opposed to having to absorb information and think about it ourselves. So I think that's why the chatbot is really the preferred mode of communication for a lot of people. Now, up until recently, the chatbot has been sort of rather limited in its operation. You've probably experienced this yourself when you go to a chatbot on a site, maybe one of those helper bots where you've got a problem, you type in your problem, it suggests recommendations. Often it's very limited in what it can do. And if you ask it something outside of its knowledge base or whatever, it's going to have a lot of problems and it's probably just going to refer you to a human, right? But that all changes with GPT and the ChatGPT API. So what this does is it actually allows you to very easily make your own chatbot that is as smart as ChatGPT, but if you do it the right way, you can actually inform it with the right reference data to make it, I would say, even better than having a fully trained member of staff on call 24/7 to help out someone who has a question. Now, let's go back a step, all right? How do you make a chatbot with ChatGPT? It's actually a lot easier than you might expect, okay? Really, the way you want to think about it is ChatGPT is like maybe a friend that you've got who has been in a coma since 2021. Now, they're super intelligent, okay, but they don't really, firstly, they don't know anything that's happened since 2021 when they fell into their coma state and they've just recently woken up. And also they don't remember anything that you tell them because they've got some sort of, serious brain condition that prevents them from forming new memories, okay? So anytime you want to use ChatGPT as a chatbot, you need to make sure that you're feeding in all the required information, all the instructions and all the reference data that it needs in order to generate its response. So how exactly you do that? Let me show you. Let me show you some examples. So I'm in the playground here. Now I'm going to go on chat mode and I'm going to make sure that my browser is 125% as per rules to better presentations. And I'm going to go ahead and update my model to GPT-4 because that gives the best results. Okay, so this is the playground. This is where we can test out all of our wacky and wonderful ideas of building a chatbot in ChatGPT without doing any technical sort of coding or anything like that. So this is really perfect if you're maybe a non-technical person or even a technical person who just wants to quickly test out whether an idea is feasible without putting any time into doing any coding whatsoever. So on the left-hand side of the screen here, you'll see there's a system prompt, and that's where you put in all your instructions on how you want the chatbot to behave. Okay, so for example, just say I wanted to create a pirate chatbot. Okay, so I want this pirate to act like, this chatbot, I want this chatbot to act like a pirate. Okay, all I have to do that is just type in the system prompt, you are a pirate. And it's literally that easy. Now, when I type a message, I'll just get rid of that. When I type in a message in the user box, it's going to take that instruction, you are a pirate, and respond to all our requests as a pirate, which is really cool. So let me say something here. Hey there, how are you? Okay, so when I submit that message as the user, it's going to respond to me as the assistant. Okay, and it's given me an assistant message here. Ahoy matey, as a pirate, I be feeling fine and ready for some adventure on the high seas. How be ye? Right? Which is what you'd expect, I guess, a pirate to say. So that's how easy it is to start doing stuff with a chatbot. You can obviously put whatever you want into this system message. Now, there are a whole bunch of other inputs here. I don't think we'll get too much into the details for now. But let's take this a step further, okay? Sure, making a little pirate chatbot is cool, but we want to actually make something useful for a business, okay? So let's say we wanted to have a chatbot that could respond to questions about a company's policies. All you would have to do to answer a question about a policy is put whatever the policy details or documents are into this system prompt, and then when the user asks the question about how to do something, it's going to be able to refer to those documents that are in the system prompt to formulate its response. And thereby it will appear as if the chatbot knows the answer to all that stuff. But obviously it's our friend who just woke up for a coma, but it's like when someone asks him a question, you're slipping him some notes about, this is the policy that they're asking about, FYI. And then he can quickly scan through it and then answer in real time as if he already knew it. Now, obviously, he doesn't actually know anything about it because, like I said, he doesn't remember anything that's happened since 2021. But by passing in the system prompt, that's basically his little notes area that you're giving him. So let's do an example. What I'm going to do is open up the SSW rules, which I should have bookmarked because they're the best site in the world. And I'll open up the SSW rules to how to send a V2 email, because that's an example that I like to use a lot. So this here is the SSW rules. If you haven't been there already, I highly encourage you to check it out and learn all about the best practices of, all sorts of things. Because of V2 email, obviously the concept of that is not a widely known thing. And our friend who went into a coma in 2021 has no specialized knowledge about SSW rules. So if I ask him about SSW rules and how you send a V2 email, he's obviously going to have no idea. Okay? So the answer that he gives, start by opening your preferred email client, click on Compose or New Email button to create a new email draft. In the to field, enter the recipient's email address. In the subject email, write a clear and concise subject line that reflects the content. It is essential to mention V2 in the subject line. Okay? 5, in the email body, provide a brief introduction or context to remind the recipient about the previous email. Clearly present the updated content or information in a well-organized way, blah, blah, blah. So you can see here what it's doing is actually nothing to do with the SSW rules to V2 email. Okay, so one of the important things is we don't put V2 in the subject line because if you do that, see that warning right there, do not add V2 to the subject as you want to keep the thread. So if you put V2 in the subject, it's going to make a whole new email thread. So this answer that it's given here without any training is just like a general, how do you send an email or a second version of an email, but it's not the SSW way. So that's why we need to pass it that reference information. And then when I've added the reference information in there and do it again, you'll see that the answer is exactly what we want it to say according to the rule content that we have passed in. So you can see there the value of passing in reference information so that when you ask a question related to that reference information, the answer that it gives you is exactly what you want it to tell you. Okay? So we're seeing here a cool example of how you can pass in some reference information related to a query and get back a response. But that's not really the whole story, is it? Because you don't want to have to, whenever you have someone ask a question, go search the rule, find the rule content that you want, paste it into the system prompt, and then get them to type the question in there and give them the answer. That sort of defeats the purpose of doing any sort of automation if you need to go and look up the rule yourself and paste it in there. So that's where the next part of the puzzle comes in, and that's called embeddings. So the concept of embeddings is basically mapping pieces of text, they could be a sentence or a paragraph or even a whole essay, mapping pieces of text in multi-dimensional space based on their meaning. All right. Now, if you want a more detailed explanation of this, I encourage you to go watch my talk, which will be in the description below or something like that. Now, how embeddings work, like I said, is based on the input text. It could be a sentence or a paragraph or whatever. We map the location of that in multi-dimensional space. And then in order to find out the most similar pieces of text by their meaning, we just measure the distance between a given point and all of its neighbors. And then the nearest neighbor is the most similar piece of text. So what we can do with this is we can take all of the SSW rules and break them all down into smaller parts, maybe a paragraph or 2 paragraphs in each part. And then we're going to map all of those different pieces into this embedding space. And then when we have a query, for example, how do I send a V2 email? What we're going to do in the background is we're going to embed that query, okay? And then based on its location, the embedding of the query in multi-dimensional space, we're going to measure the distance between that query and all of our paragraphs of rules content, right? And then the most similar paragraphs of rules content, we're going to pull them out of there and we're going to put them into the system prompt, right? And so in that way, we've sort of automated this process of looking up related rule content and applying it or supplying it to the system prompt of ChatGPT. And then we simply have to repeat the user's query with the related rules content. That way we'll get exactly what we wanted to according to the reference data that we have supplied. Now let me show you an example of this in action. So we actually have a rules bot. So this site here, rulesgpt.ssw.com.au, is publicly available right now. So go ahead and try it out for yourself. Here are some example queries that I can send in. So for example, how do I send a V2 email? I can send that query in, and in the background, what it's doing right now is it's actually searching for content on SSW rules related to that query based on the embeddings. And then it's sending that related content into the ChatGPT system prompt along with my user query, which is how do I send a V2 email? And then it's formulating a response. So you can see here, to send a V2 of an email, you should create an entirely new version of the email. This is usually necessary when you've received substantial feedback about the original email, blah, blah, blah. So it's basically taking content, and we can see the link here we can actually click on to get more details. It's taking content, this stuff here about substantial feedback or when you've made a mistake, and it's turning it into a ChatGPT response to us, which is pretty cool. And that's really how easy it is. So you can make a really smart seeming chatbot without any sort of advanced technical knowledge. All you need to do is just keep in mind the process that we've implemented here to figure out some method by which to pass in reference data. Now, obviously that reference data we pass in doesn't need to be from embeddings. You could have some sort of other API endpoint that just returns related data to the current user, or somehow figure out what their request is about and put it in there. Embeddings is just the easiest way to do it if you've got a query in text form and a bunch of reference data in text form. But of course it doesn't need to be. Now, the other cool thing that you can do that I think is a bit of a superpower of the chatbot is if you are dealing with embeddings, you can actually ask it questions in different languages and you'll get a response in a different language as well. So let me just start a new chat here and let me just ask it in Chinese a question, which I can't speak. So I need to now open up translate.google.com. And so what I'm going to type in here is how do I send a V2 email? Okay, then I'm just going to grab that, come back here and chuck it in the chat thing and send that. So now I'm speaking Chinese to it, right? So do you think this is going to work? Well, of course it is, because when it does the embedding search, the Chinese text of how do I send a V2 email is actually mapped in the embedding space in the same spot as if it was English. Because when we map it through embeddings, we're actually mapping it based on its meaning, not its text content. So it's able to find the similar rules to the query, how do I send it in Chinese, and then formulate a response in Chinese, even though the rules are in English. Okay? I think that's one of the coolest things about this whole embedding search process, because it means you can basically out of the box support all sorts of other languages without doing any work whatsoever. And let's just confirm that it's done the right thing. I'm going to copy that content, go back to Google Translate, swap these around, paste it in there, and let's just make sure it says the right thing. Yeah, so it says open your V1 email and sent items, actions, add V2 in the email, replace V1 with V2 as if it never happened, same for V3, V4. Warning, do not add V2 to the subject. And there's a template for it. So yeah, there you go. This thing out of the box supports any language that would have been in the training data, which is most languages, most human languages at least, in the world. So yet another free bonus advantage for using ChatGPT. So today I've shown you how easy it is to get started with ChatGPT API and make your own chatbot, or even just mess around with it. Now, if you're interested in more information on this, here's a QR code where you can go to read about it. This is Calum Simpson for SSW TV, signing off.